This video is about disciplining children, East versus West. I think this is very relevant to the martial arts because I feel that essentially the Chinese martial arts is supposed to be taught, passed on by family. So essentially your father is supposed to be the one who is trained in the martial arts, and then he's supposed to pass it on to you, onto his children. And a lot of the martial arts training is, it's about self-discipline. So you learn that early on from your parents. If your parents are not self-disciplined, they're not responsible, then chances are they're not going to raise you, to have those types of qualities. One thing that I know for certain is that the way that it is here in the West, it's not supposed to be this way where the child runs the household. That should never be the case. That's like having a child try to drive an automobile at the age of 3 or something, or trying to have a child become a police officer at the age of 3. I mean, the child needs to be guided by the parent, and the parent should never at all times just submit to the child and whatever he wants. Like if the child demands candy 24 hours a day, then that should not be adhered to by the adult. If the child just wants to, cross the street without looking and get hit by a car, that's not something that the parent should allow. If the child wants to play with fire and burn himself and burn down the whole house, that's not what the child or the parent should allow. So there has to be, the parent has to put his or her foot down. But it could also go in extreme cases where the parent is clearly abusing and violating the child in many ways. Might be torturing the child, raping the child, and being violent towards the child, and that clearly is not the way either. So it's a balance, and it's an art to raise a child, and there's no right, I can't tell everybody exactly how you're supposed to do it, but I can say that the way that I was raised by my parents, I feel that it really helped shape who I am today and helped me develop, good self-discipline. The way that they raised me is very different than how, normal American families are. For one, they never got divorced. They were always there. My father was always there, being present, and he had an authority and respect where he never had to put his hands on me or beat me, but he had my respect because I knew, that if I got him angry, it wouldn't be good news for me. My mom would usually be the one that would physically discipline me for the most part, and then also verbally as well. So I received a lot of verbal discipline, a lot of physical discipline, and even when it is, I don't feel that it would have been justified, it just helped me become more resilient and stronger, in which to, it's almost to the point where they treat you so rough that by the time you get older, struggles that normal people consider struggles aren't really struggles for you anymore, because you've been through a lot worse, and she was the one who would do the verbal and physical discipline, and then if things got really bad, then I knew that my dad would even make it worse for me. So I would already learn to not make things worse, and I think that that's what's needed in the household. If you think about it, the law is the one that gives discipline to adults and even to some children. But people get arrested, people get arrest records, people get fined, people get put in jail. The law is not necessarily, it's not necessarily lenient. I mean, some serious things that happen out there, For example, one of my former supervisors in the police department, I just recently heard that, read that he got sentenced to 4 years in prison, for child pornography. This is some serious stuff. You make a mistake, you could be in jail for the rest of your life. So basically, the parents are supposed to be the ones that discipline you and make sure that you are a responsible person before you enter into society, before you turn 18. So the way it's supposed to go is that your mom is supposed to discipline you, and if she's harsh enough, then it'll stop there, and you don't need your dad to get involved. And then your dad's supposed to be like the next level above the mom, where if whatever the mom's trying to do with you and telling you what to do, what not to do, and you're not listening, then that's when your dad steps in. And then he's supposed to really put things, put things right. And then the law should never get involved. They should just stop at your dad. So if you are a bully and you like to bully people in school and beat people up, then your mom should, essentially beat you up, to let you know how it feels, to get you to stop. And then if you don't stop, she beats you up and you still don't stop, then that's when your father comes in and really beats you up hard until you learn to stop. And that if you don't listen to your father, the next thing you know, you become an adult, you start beating up people in real life, and and then the law steps in and they just put you in jail, and they might put you in jail for 5 years, 10 years, or whatever the case may be. You might even murder somebody. So that's just one example. It could be something like, you smoking cigarettes, and then your mom beats you up for doing that, and then you stop. But if you don't stop, then your dad steps in and then beats you harder, and then if that doesn't make you stop, and then next thing you know, you get into marijuana, and then all of a sudden you get into heroin, and you get into crack, and then you get in trouble with the law, end up in jail for many years. Or say it could be a situation where the child is fondling his sister or something, and then the mom steps up and beats up the child to make sure that he doesn't do that again. Say he doesn't listen to the mom, then the father should step in and beat him even harder until he listens, so he doesn't do that. If he doesn't listen to the father, okay, so he goes out there, start fondling strangers, ends up landing, raping a woman, ends up landing in jail for 30 years or whatnot. So it is the parents have to step in to do something. You're not, I think in Illinois law, you're not supposed to beat the child where there's markings, but you're allowed to spank them, or you're allowed to physically discipline them as long as there's no markings. But every state, might have different laws. But fact of the matter is, parents have to do something. You can't just let the child do whatever they want to do, especially if you care about the child. It's not an easy thing, but basically in the martial arts, it's like you gotta, as a sifu, you gotta teach the child or the student from the get-go. You don't abuse your authority, and if you try to, then you're gonna come down on them hard and make sure that they don't ever do that. And if they still try to abuse their authority, then you don't help them progress to be any better than where they're at. You're just gonna keep beating them until they finally learn to be humble. And if it's a fake humbleness, then you still don't teach them. You just keep beating them. It's basically just like sparring. I mean, martial arts, they're sparring. So somebody, say it's boxing. Somebody, you taught him a few techniques. He's your son, and then he starts beating up, everybody in the class. Thinks he's the hot stuff, and then he starts going to school, starts beating up people for fun, and then you find out about it, and then you really beat him down in the boxing ring. You beat him hard, so he learns not to do that again. And then You let time go by, see if he keeps doing it. If he keeps doing it, then you keep beating him until he learns his lesson. Basically, the way it works is just, you know, it's like somebody that's a bully. In order for them to learn to humble themselves, they got to get beat down. I mean, that's how Conor McGregor, was. He's just talking all his trash to Mayweather and Mayweather's father, and then till he gets beat down. And then when he gets beat down, he can't say anything more. He got to learn to humble himself. Even Muhammad Ali has talked so much until he got beat up, and then he can't say anything anymore. And when it's a child, before they get really strong and capable, you gotta in the martial arts, you gotta beat them down until they humble themselves. If they don't humble themselves, then you don't help them get better. You just keep laying it on him, keep knocking him down to the ground until he learns. And they will have to learn over and over again. You keep beating them down until you break them down, until there's no arrogance left at all, until the point where they're forced to learn to be modest, forced to learn to be humble. But if it's in them to be bullies, then you just focus on the meditative side, the spiritual side. Don't enhance that aggressive side. You gotta adjust your teachings accordingly. And it's all about how the children are raised and how the students are taught in the school. Because if you have a school that doesn't promote competition, then there's no way that the people that join the school are going to be able to stroke their egos and basically become like violent competitive animals, because you don't even go to any competitions. And when you spar, you don't allow it to get to that point. They end up quitting the school and going somewhere else. And that's essentially what you do. You just get them. If you can't humble yourself, then just leave. Get out of here. You don't belong here. And then in the household, well, if you don't follow the rules of the household, then you either get beat down or you could leave and get your own place to live in, pay for your own stuff, but if it's a child, then they have to stay under your household, but then you're gonna find your way to get to them, to teach them. And it's an art to it, and not everybody is gonna really easily understand. But it's clearly that the way that they raise children in the East is very different than here in the West. I think here in the West, a lot of children are just spoiled, and they don't know how to respect authority. They don't know how to respect human beings, and they don't know how to respect themselves. And really, a lot of these people that are just doing these crazy things is just lack of proper parental guidance. And then that's why they're doing these crazy things out there. And that's why it makes it very important for there to be good role models, because a lot of people don't even have fathers at home that are teaching them or guiding them towards the right path. So there needs to be like Bruce Lee's out there that people can be inspired by, in which to learn to better themselves and become self-disciplined. And that's the way I see it.